Welcome to our review of the Nokia N8. I'm the Prodigal Fool. So the N8 is an important, if not historic, device for Nokia in that it's more than likely to be the Finnish company's last high-end smartphone sporting the Symbian operating system. So it's kind of a tradition here at the Prodigal Guide. We like to start with the good, move on to the bad, and finish up with the ugly bottom line. What's good about the N8? I think, the first thing is it's not an iPhone. Thank God, an alternative to the iPhone. I'm so sick of looking at iPhones everywhere I go, bars, meetings, iPhones, schmiphones. It's an alternative to the iPhone, and I think it's an alternative which is just as good looking. This is really impressive hardware. It really feels great in the hand, has a lovely quality finish to it. Most of the unit is metallic, but it's light, it's thin. Really looks good. Congratulations to Nokia on a beautiful piece of hardware design. Genuinely, I mean, that's really nice. The second standout feature, probably the biggest, most important feature of this phone, is the camera. I'm just going to fire up the camera app for you there. The camera is incredibly impressive. The app itself, you'll be familiar with from previous iterations of Nokia's OS. Nothing particularly special there. The real magic happens around the back here. Carl's Zeiss 12 megapixel optics, and of course the xenon flash. Now, whether it's software or hardware, I don't know. I don't know much about photography, but I tell you what, I do know results, and this thing just consistently produces very, very impressive photos. The third good standout feature for me with the N8 is the ability to customize it. So what we're now looking at is one of the three home screens on the Nokia N8. This will be a big shock to any iPhone users out there. You don't have anything like home screens. Android does, but this is Nokia's version of it. So all of these widgets that you're now looking at, you can move around, place where you want on the screen, and of course you can decide what they are. It's taken me a little bit of time to get this thing set up the way I want to use it, and you'd have to invest some time to do the same. But once you've done it, it's really worth it because it pays off in spades. So, for instance, this is my main home screen. I've got today's current weather, I've got upcoming meetings, I've got my latest emails, I've got any missed events, calls, and I've got shortcuts to my most often used applications. Next home screen, more shortcuts, controls for the MP3 player, and this lovely little carousel thing is favorite contact. The next standout feature worth mentioning is Ovi Maps. This is now a really impressive piece of software. It's taken them some time, Nokia, to develop this. I don't know what version we're on now. It's certainly been out for a few years, Ovi Maps. But they finally got it to a stage where it's, I think, significantly better than the competition. Why? Well, first of all, you get free voice navigation for life. So this thing really does replace a GPS unit. Secondly, as you can see, I'm playing around with it now. Just really smooth scrolling. It's just very impressive what they've managed to achieve there. Look at that. Smooth all the way out. That's pretty cool. What else about Ovi Maps worth mentioning? Oh yes, of course. You also have the ability to load up maps offline. So you can use a PC to load up maps, or you can do it over Wi-Fi. You don't have to use your data connection. That's pretty useful because you can imagine these maps are pretty data intensive. The final thing that I'd like to mention before we close the good part of this review is, I guess, just a whole bunch of little details that remind you that Nokia really, has its history steeped in phone manufacture. These people are really master phone makers, and they know about little details that perhaps other manufacturers wouldn't think of that improve the usability of their devices. Let me give you a few examples of what I'm talking about. It's going to seem like a crazy detail, but it's something I really liked. The clock that appears when you lock the device, it's there permanently now. While the device is in standby mode. Really useful. Doesn't use much power, but you can see the time and the date at all times. Really, really handy. What else? It's got It's got a really neat FM transmitter built in here. So if you're in the car and you want to send your music to your car hi-fi, no problem at all. Just switch on the FM transmitter and it does that wirelessly. And then there's other things like, we often forget to mention this, but yeah, these things are still supposed to be used for making phone calls, right? This has fantastic sound quality, whether you're calling out or receiving calls, just great sound quality on here and great reception during our tests with it. Another little detail that I really liked was this home button here, bottom left-hand corner, has a little pulsating light on its edge, which notifies you of things like missed calls or new text messages or whatever. And so again, a little detail, but one that in real-life use becomes really handy. Fantastic screen also on the N8, really good. Whether you're indoors, outdoors, it doesn't matter. The N8 produces some really good results when it comes to looking at photos, movies, whatever it may be. You really have some very good colours, very dark blacks. This doesn't have the clear black technology that some of the newer Nokia models has, but honestly, you wouldn't notice it. You couldn't tell. The blacks on this thing were amazing, very vivid and realistic colours. What's bad about the Nokia N8? A few things, unfortunately. I guess the first thing to mention is Ovi Store. Now, Nokia has certainly improved Ovi Store since the last time I had a good play around with it, which I guess was probably on my Nokia N86 quite a while ago now. It's a lot better than it was. Unfortunately, it's still not quite there. So close Nokia, but no cigar, I'm afraid. What's wrong with it? I guess my biggest complaint is just lack of quality apps. Now, there's a whole explanation behind that, why people aren't developing for Symbian operating system, which we don't have time to go into, but certainly you do notice it. There are nowhere near as many quality apps in here as there are in other app stores. The second thing is that it's still buggy. I got a lot of download errors, I got actual crashes of the Ovi Store app while I was using it, things that I've never experienced when using... oh, I've just pressed a button by mistake. Yeah, don't worry, that happens a lot. The other annoying thing is, you see it's asking me to do it now. It just randomly asks me to sign in. I've already signed in since the phone has been switched on, and yet by quitting and going back into the store, it's now asking me to sign in again. That's a pain. I mentioned the lack of apps in the Ovi Store. Does it really matter? Well, if you are addicted to wasting your time on Twitter like I am, then yeah, it does, because there isn't even an official Twitter client available in the Ovi Store, and I think that shows you the issues that Nokia are up against in terms of getting developers on board. If Twitter won't produce an app, then who else would? Well, actually, when it comes to Twitter, the answer is Gravity. So someone else will go to the trouble of developing the app, and it's a perfectly good app, pretty functional, decent enough looking, but guess what? You've got to pay for it. Now, I don't resent the developer for charging. He's spent his time developing the app. It's only right that he should charge for it, but it's a shame that the Symbian ecosystem is in such a state that a good free Twitter app isn't available. And this is just one example of things that are lacking in the Ovi Store. The second bad element that I wanted to mention to you about the N8 is the virtual keyboard. So I think probably the best thing to do is show you that in operation, because it's hard to describe. Let me open the Notes app. Let's start a new note. Where's my keyboard? Here's irritation number 1. You have to press twice. Now, the keyboard pops up, but as you can see, the app behind it disappears, so you have no context anymore of what you're typing in where. This is a note, so it's fairly straightforward, but imagine how confusing it can get in web forms. Now, this is the portrait keyboard. You'll notice it's not a QWERTY. It's the T9 input method, familiar from prehistoric days. But you know what? It works. It really works. I actually like it. I mean, Nokia have taken quite a lot of criticism for this implementation, but I kind of like it. Big keys, easy to use, one-handed, predictive text, that all works. So I don't really have a problem with that. Where I do have much more of a problem is when you go into the QWERTY mode. The keys are small, you don't have multi-touch on this keyboard, so it's not as responsive as other phones. I'm struggling to talk while I type. because typing successfully on here does take quite a lot of concentration. I'm not doing a bad job, actually. Just to give you an idea, whoops, I've got to go back. It's okay. I mean, you know, it gets the job done. It's just not up there with the best. I guess the third bad thing to mention is overall experience of using the device. You know, it's just not as slick as the competition. The screen response is a little bit laggy. The scrolling is just not quite as smooth as you would expect somehow. And we've had a few bugs, you know, within a few minutes of firing it up, the whole thing crashed and I had to reboot it. I've had another crazy bug whereby the virtual keyboard just stops popping up when it's supposed to, so you can't enter any text, and the only thing that I've managed to do to cure that is to reboot the device. It also... There were some odd design decisions, and the one that really stands out is why this home button is off-center. It's really nice if you're using it right-handed. That home button is just where you want it to be. But of course, if you want to use it left-handed, wow, that really hurts, actually. That's very uncomfortable for your thumb to reach back and touch that button. So you know, why not just put it centrally? That just seems like such a no-brainer. I can't believe that Nokia didn't think to do that. Anyway. You know, and other than that, all the major apps that you'd expect are pretty much there. Yes, you get a diary. It's fine. It gets the job done. Nothing spectacular there. Yes, you get an email client. Again, it's okay. This email looks interesting. This looks like it's about my wine cellar plan. Now we're going to see how it handles HTML email. This is a first, incidentally, that I can remember on a Nokia phone. It does actually render the HTML as it was intended to be seen, which is a good thing. Unfortunately, as you can probably tell, the scrolling's not as super smooth as it is on an iPhone, and indeed the way that it handles scrolling in and out is not as slick. Let me show you what I mean. Let's double click on there to read that text. It hasn't framed it right, so I need to scroll out just a little bit. I'll scroll in, still not quite there. Double click, no. Double click, no. Close, but why have I got this? It's just, you know, it's fine. Again, you can, as I've said way too many times in this review already, it's fine. It gets the job done. It just doesn't do it as slickly as other devices. Look, the latest version of Symbian's okay. It's not world-leading by any means, but nor will it have you slamming your phone into your desk in frustration like previous versions did. It's okay. It gets the job done. If you want a smartphone that's slick, that's easy to use, that has consistent user interface with an abundance of apps, and also that's thoroughly reliable, then buy Android or Apple. But, and it's a big, big but, if photography is in any way important to you, and to a lesser extent navigation and multimedia, then actually I don't think you can buy a better phone than the N8 right now. The photos and videos this thing produces really, really are superb. The flexibility afforded by things like the HDMI out and USB mode, that's the HDMI port there that you can use to plug directly into a big screen TV. Those are really invaluable features to some people. Things like the FM transmitter that I mentioned earlier make it a great travel companion, particularly in the car. And of course, Ovi Maps. Free voice navigation, much smoother map rendering, and that's really now a significant improvement over any other mobile mapping solutions. So, in short, to some people, unfortunately they're in the minority, this is probably the best smartphone you can buy. I think most everyone else should buy an iPhone.